Here's a question for you. Can a game be both good and bad? Both easy and difficult? Can one single game be both a fun, unique, and rather innovative experience, as well as the most infuriatingly frustrating and broken mess imaginable? Well, as it turns out, yes it can. It absolutely can. Depending on how you play it. Thing is, your enjoyment of a game, any game really, can be massively affected by how you decide to play it and how much of it you choose to engage with. After all, plenty of games have a plethora of content you technically can skip if you want to, though just how optional that content happens to be can vary greatly. Hell, in some, if not most cases, you still have to complete at least part of this quote-unquote optional content in order to access and/or experience the complete game. You know, like if you want the proper/true ending and such, stuff like that. Point is, just playing a game can be a very different experience from trying to complete a game, and today's subject is pretty much a prime example of that. On the face of it, it's just a simple, fun, and rather cute little puzzle platformer, but if you want to reach the true ending, well...
you'll be sorry!
Hi, I'm AtticLoaf, and this is Bomberman 64. Bomberman sure is an interesting little fella, ain't he? He's certainly had quite a career filled with about a metric ton of titles, with lots of different designs, qualities, and even names. Like, have you ever heard of Robo Warrior, Dino Blaster, or Atomic Punk? Yep, all the same guy. There was also whatever the hell this thing was supposed to be, but we don't really talk about that. Either way, Bomberman's overall track record is generally pretty impressive, though I haven't really played all or even anything close to most of his games. After all, he literally has more games than I have years of being alive, and I'm not exactly with it anymore.
I used to be with it, but then they changed what it was. Now what I'm with isn't it, and what's it seems weird and scary to me. It'll happen to you.
As far as I can work out though, the main Bomberman formula has tended to remain fairly consistent. That's not to say every game is exactly the same, no, but they do seem to mostly stick to the same kind of deal. An arena-style battler where you and a set number of opponents try to blow each other up while avoiding each other's bombs and various other obstacles. It's a surprisingly fun concept, and while they could have changed things up a bit more every now and then, I think it's more a case of sticking to what you do best and not fixing what isn't broken. Or so you would have thought until the mid to late 90s rolled around and a certain shift within the industry all but forced just about everyone to reconsider their previously established approaches. I am of course referring to the shift from 2D to 3D, especially within platformers. Now, considering Bomberman wasn't really a platformer to begin with, you might have thought he was in the clear, but for whatever reason, even he wanted in on this whole 3D craze. As a result, in 1997, you could conceivably turn on your TV, only to be greeted by this.
Bomberman, Bomberman, mass destruction across the land. Makes a bomb any size, and he's yours to customize. Oh yeah, your very own Bomberman.
Yep, that was an actual, real commercial for Bomberman 64. And no, I have no idea what Spider-Man has to do with it either. You don't really get that good of an idea as to what the game itself is actually like from this either, but trust me, it's probably nothing like what you're expecting. There's definitely quite a bit to talk about here though, but let's just start light with some of its better aspects. For example, the visuals. This is one of the first things you'll notice after all, and well, just look at it. Just take a look at these bright, vivid colors, cute, endearing characters, and just overall loveliness of it all, and tell me it doesn't just make you all warm and fuzzy. I mean, really, how could I possibly have a problem with any of this? Well, I suppose the fact that certain items are clearly just flat 2D images can look a bit silly, but it's not like it really ruins anything. Unfortunately, the same cannot be said for the camera, which is honestly just atrocious. Fair enough, it does technically work most of the time, and you can adjust and move it a bit, but there are so many times when your view will just be completely obstructed as the camera actually gets blocked by the damn scenery.
Get that shit out of the way! I can't see what I'm doing!
At least the music's pretty excellent across the board though. There might be one or two tracks that aren't absolutely spectacular, but overall, this is one solid soundtrack. yeah, not too shabby, right? The only slight issue might be that some tracks can occasionally get a teeny tiny bit repetitive. Then again, that also depends quite a bit on just how long it takes you to complete a given level. As mentioned, this is at its core essentially just a 3D puzzle platformer that places the titular Bomberman in a series of relatively square-shaped levels. While every level does contain an expected array of obstacles and enemies, the only real goal is simply to, well, reach the goal. In other words, fairly simple and straightforward stuff. On the surface. You see, there are a few things that does make this a bit of a different beast than most other platformers, chief among which is the fact that Bomberman can't jump.
What? No, alright. I know that sounds bad.
No, you know what? It actually doesn't sound bad. It sounds completely ruinous. Just think about it. What platformer have you ever heard of that removes the ability to jump? That's like one of the key features of the genre, isn't it? Hell, it's the whole reason Mario even exists. It's why he was originally known as Jumpman. Seriously, what kind of broken-ass logic is this? Well, as it happens, they do have an alternative in place. Just use bombs. Yep, instead of just being able to jump, you actually have to utilize your unlimited supply of bombs as a way to bounce across gaps and the like. Technically, this does kinda and mostly work, I suppose, but holy buttery chicken is it imprecise and fiddly. For one thing, you don't normally want to attempt these bounces with just your regular starter bombs. Oh, it's possible, but as they explode on their own after a relatively short amount of time, you're just gonna bomb yourself unless you can utilize them very quickly. No, what you really want and usually need to do is get the so-called remote bomb upgrade first, as these are, unsurprisingly enough, remote triggered and can therefore be bounced on for however long you need. And trust me, you're gonna need all the time you can possibly get. It doesn't really stop there though, as you also have the ability to create so-called pumped bombs. While you can just place bombs on the ground and or kick them into position from there, you can also pick them up and throw them, before which you have the option to essentially blow them up. Like a balloon, not, you know, boom. Anyway, these pumped bombs are essentially just stronger bombs with a bigger blast radius, but they also let you bounce across bigger gaps or at different angles and velocities and whatnot. Basically, you have to utilize both big and small bombs at the correct times and places in order to reach specific areas. Believe it or not though, it actually gets even worse. In addition to everything else I mentioned, it turns out that you also have to master how to build these bomb steps, as well as utilize what I can only describe as a literal bug or glitch exploit. Yes, you're actually expected to rely on the fact that the game is downright broken, if you want a true ending. See, that's kind of the thing with all this. It's really only a problem if you're aiming to fully complete the game. If you play it more casually and or just want to reach an ending, you may never notice any issues whatsoever, as they really only start coming into play if you want to see everything. You may argue that this should make things less bad, as you don't have to deal with any of it after all, but I would counter that you actually do if you want to play the game as intended. Sure, you can ignore most of it, but that's kinda like playing GTA and only doing taxi missions. It's not exactly what the creators had in mind. Getting back to what I was saying though, the bomb jumping is bad and complicated enough on its own, but setting up bomb steps is absolute hell. Like I said, there's no actual jumping in this game, and yet there are platforms and areas that are seemingly too high to reach. This is where you have to create these bomb steps, which essentially means having to place multiple bombs of perfect size in the exact perfect position at multiple incremental levels in order to reach the higher areas. May not sound that bad, but this can require quite a few very carefully placed bombs, and if just one of them is even the tiniest bit off, you at best have to blow them all up and start all over, or at worst, get uncontrollably bounced around, potentially straight to your death.
Oh, that's just great.
You have no idea. Finally, there's one more move at your disposal, and I honestly cannot believe this is real. It literally involves exploiting kind of a glitch in the physics of the game, and yet it's an intended feature. Basically, there are certain areas in some levels where you have to reach a higher ledge, but there's seemingly no way to do so, not even with the bomb steps method. As it happens though, there is a way to make Bomberman bounce upward and reach said ledge, and all you have to do is knock him out. You heard me. This gets a bit tricky and, well, stupid, so apologies if I don't explain it all that well, but here goes. Position Bomberman near the ledge and or close to a wall. Place a bomb kinda beneath and behind him, then grab another bomb and throw it so it hits the wall, bounces back and knocks out Bomberman. If done properly, Bomberman should end up on top of the placed bomb and start bouncing, and with a little fiddling of the controls, he should eventually end up on the ledge in question. Yes, all of that is an intended and necessary feature.
I get it. I don't get it.
Neither do I. I mean, why? Why would you create a game with no jumping if the levels are still designed around jumping style mechanics? Sure, you could argue that this is actually a fairly unique and kinda innovative solution to this particular problem, but I'd argue that the problem wouldn't even exist if they hadn't created it in the first place. Seriously, this just can't have been the idea all along. At some stage, either the level designers, the programmers, or both must have made some kind of mistake and or stopped talking to each other, as this just feels absolutely broken. It's literally the kind of thing people try when they want to break a game or find speedrun shortcuts and the like. It should not be a core aspect of the experience. To add insult to injury, they don't even have the common courtesy to explain most of this to you. Yes, they do provide a few minor hints and tidbits every now and then, but for stuff like this, the things that are damn near impossible to figure out without at least a little help? Crickets. Hell, they don't even bother properly explaining what you're actually meant to do in general. You really are left to just figure stuff out for yourself.
Well, we're boned.
Now, obviously, you can and will figure out some aspects on your own. If I can, you can. But when even the items all but require a guide to be fully understood, you know you've balked it. Just take the two most common pickups you'll find, for example, the fire and bomb items. These appear pretty frequently and obviously must do something, but there is not a single indication of what that might be anywhere. Really, you don't get any sort of pop-up or bar or anything to tell you how many you have or what they're for, and their effect is far too subtle for most to even notice. You see, the bomb item actually just increases the amount of bombs you can place at any one time up to a maximum of 8, and the fire increases the blast radius up to a max of about 4 or 5, I think. Yeah, okay, that's all well and good, but here's a radical idea. Actually show me this happening. Seriously, how hard is it to just have some kind of bomb amount bar or power indicator or just something? You don't have to make everything a damn guessing game.
Idiots.
Then there's the item the entire game kind of revolves around, the gold cards. These are essentially the main collectible, as you need to get all of them in order to unlock the final world. Every level contains 5 cards each, and while most of them aren't exactly impossible to collect, the game itself never actually explains anything about these things either. Yeah, you likely will find at least a few without any help, as most of them are in fact just hidden around the various levels, but some indication of that would still be nice. Besides, there's absolutely no mention of the fact that one of the cards in each level relates to killing a certain amount of enemies, or that the cards for boss fights work completely differently. That's right, this game does indeed have a fair few boss fights, and yes, even they contain 5 gold cards to collect. Unfortunately, it's not exactly obvious what you need to do to actually get said cards. Sure, figuring out that one of them has to do with winning within a given time isn't impossible, nor is the fact that simply beating the boss tends to give you another, but the remaining 3 can be just about anything. At first, it seems like it's going to be about hitting and destroying certain parts of the boss before killing it, but then you're suddenly required to instead bounce a pump bomb on their heads or throw a bomb into their mouth or some such. It's anything but consistent. In addition, the bosses also require you to get all 5 gold cards in one run. You can't get them one at a time.
A man can dream, though. A man can dream.
I honestly just don't get this one. In all the other levels, you can simply go back in to find whatever gold cards you may have missed the first time around, but for the bosses, you have to collect all of them at once. Yes, you can retry as many times as you want, but miss one card and you have to get all of them yet again. You can't focus on just one of them like you can in the standard levels. Now, to be fair, most of the bosses are actually kind of fun, and it is more than possible to all but accidentally get all the cards the first time around anyway, but it's still annoying that the only real option here is to play all but perfectly. Well, I suppose you could always ignore the gold cards if you prefer. They are only necessary if you want the last world and true ending after all, but the game literally shoves them in your face from the very beginning. Really, the very first time you press the start button, which will most likely happen early in the very first level, you'll see this screen essentially listing the number of available cards, as well as the so-called target completion time. Now, as this is the first level, you may not realize exactly what all this means yet, but it is pretty obvious that you are supposed to fill in those blanks somehow. Unfortunately, the very first level is also one of the most cryptic ones, as getting anything other than the time-based or enemy kill cards require the use of the whole bomb step thing I mentioned earlier. As a result, you could easily end up wasting hours just cluelessly wandering around trying to find whatever fills those blanks on that pause screen, so even if you end up not going for full completion, the gold cards are still a giant pain.
Oh, be nice!
Actually, I was kinda planning to. After all, the remaining aspects of the game are all pretty solid. I suppose the controls can get a bit wonky at times, but it's really more of a camera and physics issue, I think. The life system is also kind of annoying and outdated, what with the one-hit deaths and only 3 continues before game over and what have you, but it's fairly tolerable. You can get more continues by collecting enough gems after all, and if you find one of these heart things, you can even take an extra hit, so yeah, I'll give it a pass. Either way, it's certainly more than possible to have quite a bit of fun with this game, as it is very enjoyable at its core. The enemies are all quite quirky, cute, and decently varied, even if they aren't really all that difficult to deal with. Hell, most of them barely even bother you at all, they just kinda wander around. They're still decently designed though, and there are more fearsome enemies as well, especially when it comes to the main villains. Yeah, despite what you may think, considering I haven't brought it up yet, this game does have a story that does include a few villains. While it's ostensibly just a standard evil guy takes over world, hero must save the day kind of deal, it does feature a rather surprising main baddie in the form of Altair from Assassin's Creed.
Nothing is true, and everything is permitted.
Okay, I'm obviously just making a bad joke, but yes, his name actually is Altair. Maybe it's supposed to be pronounced Altar or Alter or some such, considering he doesn't have the umlauts over the I, but still, kind of a fun coinkydink, no? As for his underlings, I don't really recall any names. They more than likely have them, but no, it doesn't really come up or matter all that much. They're all pretty much just variations on the same Power Bomber Ranger Man design they've gone for anyway, and while the battles do have some slight differences here and there, none of them are ultimately all that memorable or unique. They're not horrible or anything, no, they're just kinda standard. They're more or less what you'd expect. Sort of. It's not really made entirely clear where these guys come from or exactly why they want Planet Bomber though, but I suppose that's just what bad guys do. We do get one ally though, as this guy called Sirius is the one who more or less recruits Bomberman into action to begin with. I would make some reference to Harry Potter here, but that was Sirius Black, and this guy's obviously more of a Sirius White. Regardless, Sirius explains that he wants revenge against Altair for apparently destroying his home planet, hence why he's helping Bomberman. In terms of gameplay though, Sirius is pretty much just an occasional gameplay guide, as he really only appears in certain levels to give a few minor explanations of basic mechanics and features. Other than that, he really only appears at the end of the game, where he either calls you a disappointment for not getting all the gold cards, or he stabs you in the back and reveals himself as the ultimate villain.
Asshole.
Yup, turns out that if you do go through the ball ache of finding all the gold cards, Sirius will suddenly fly in during the not actually final boss fight, kill Altair, and steal this thing called the Omni-Cube for himself. That's right, the true bad guy was Sirius all along. Now, I do think this is a decent enough twist, and the scene where Sirius kills Altair is surprisingly brutal, at least for this kind of thing, but it's also such a slap in the face. I mean, if you don't get the gold cards, the ending still doesn't change all that much. The only real difference is that Altair survives and Sirius never gets revealed as a villain. In addition, the final world, the Rainbow Palace, may have its own set of gold cards for a few more unlockables, but they are damn near impossible to collect, and as it turns out, the rewards are just a few more stages and skins for the multiplayer.
Oh, my favorite.
In all seriousness, getting the true ending simply isn't worth the effort, and getting all 120 gold cards is nothing but pain. Sure, you might feel like you haven't really completed the game if you don't complete the final world, but trust me, you're much better off pretending it doesn't even exist. You see, that's ultimately how this game works. It's much better when played rather casually. Oh, it has a few minor issues no matter what, but if you just go through it without worrying about the gold cards or true ending, you'll have a much better time than if you go for full completion. That doesn't really mean I can give the game a full pass and call it great though, as that would mean ignoring how genuinely broken it can get. Sure, you won't notice that nearly as much if you go the casual route, but I don't think the game should necessarily be praised for giving you a better experience when you don't engage with it as intended. It's definitely not all bad either though. I do love the overall aesthetic, the music is excellent and it is fairly unique and innovative, but I just can't comfortably recommend it. Maybe that would be different if it was a matter of difficulty settings or some such, but as it is, you essentially have to play it wrong in order to have a good time, and how can that possibly be right? Yes, there is fun to be had here, but this is unfortunately still more of a bomb than the bomb. And on that rather cringy note, I think it's time to end. Thanks for watching, and
And boom goes the dynamite.